And now we're going to look at the Bhagavad Gita, the second chapter. And we'll look at the last 6 verses. In the Bhagavad Gita, second chapter, Krishna gives a summary of of karma, jnana, yoga, bhakti. And these last 6 verses from the second chapter of the Bhagavad Gita are an answer to a question that Arjuna asks Krishna, and that is, what is a sthita prajna, or a person fixed in consciousness? What does it mean? Om ajnanatimirandasya jnananjana shalakaya chakshurun militam nena tasmai shri gurave namah. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhaktivinoda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. How is everyone today?
Great. How are you?
Zekocho. That means okay. It means better than okay, actually. It means fantastic. We'll need to see the English and the translation, the whole thing, the whole verses. If it's not too much trouble. That is the Sanskrit, word for word, and English. It's an interesting question Arjuna asks to Krishna. What are the symptoms of someone who's fixed in consciousness? And spiritual life requires some self-examination also. So, good to hear the symptoms. These are not all of them, but we're looking at the last 6 verses of the second chapter of the Gita. I'll say, please repeat. Nasti buddhir ayuktasya na cha yuktasya bhavana na cha bhavayata shantir ashantasya kutasukam na asti, there cannot be, buddhihi, transcendental intelligence, ayuktasya, of one who is not connected with Krishna consciousness. Na, not, cha, and ayuktasya, of one devoid of Krishna consciousness. Bhavana, fixed mind in happiness. Na, not, cha, and abhavayataha, of one who is not fixed. Shantihi, peace. Ashantasya, of the unpeaceful. Kutaha, where is? Sukham. Translation. One who is not connected with the Supreme in Krishna consciousness can have neither transcendental intelligence nor a steady mind, without which there is no possibility of peace. And how can there be any happiness without peace? Let's say together. One who is not connected with the Supreme in Krishna consciousness can have neither transcendental intelligence nor a steady mind, without which there is no possibility of peace. And how can there be any happiness without peace? So one more time. One who is not connected with the Supreme in Krishna consciousness can have neither transcendental intelligence nor a steady mind, without which there is no possibility of peace. And how can there be any happiness without peace?
So the essence is that one has to be connected with Krishna to achieve any sort of happiness. And
Okay.
a prelude to that is to have peace.
Nice. What else?
Maharaj, like many of, there's so many seminars going about happiness, how to find happiness. So I think this summarizes the how to find happiness in a very nice way.
Okay. What else did you hear?
It's like even if somebody is trying to accumulate knowledge without relating it to the Krishna, that knowledge is not complete, or that knowledge is not proper knowledge. So only knowledge, transcendental knowledge which is related to transcendental is original knowledge, and it will give one's steady mind, which is
nice
very
point.
difficult to attain.
Yeah.
The
Like,
real-
if I understood you correctly, you may gather information, but if that isn't connected to the original source of everything, Krishna, then that knowledge becomes perverted. I thought of a verse when you said that from the Chaturshloki Bhagavatam, in which Krishna says to Brahma, Ratertam yat pratiyeta na pratiyeta chatmani tad vidyadat manomayam yatabhaso yatatamaha. That is anything that you perceive in the world that seems to have some value, but it doesn't have a connection to the original source. To me, he says, as the divine source of everything, that you should know as Maya, or illusion. It's an illusory, because there is nothing that's disconnected from Krishna. So knowledge also, when disconnected from Krishna, becomes illusory knowledge, and that's spoken about in the Sri Upanishad, in the context of, may I have an Upanishad, please? There's knowledge, and there's, what is the opposite of knowledge? Avidya. Ignorance. So there's a way in which one can actually gather information but be culturing ignorance at the same time. Because it doesn't have a connection, right? First of all, in Mantra 9 in the Sri Upanishad, it is said, those who engage in the culture of nescient activities shall enter into the darkest region of ignorance. So, then he says, worse still are those engaged in the culture of so-called knowledge. Andam tama pravishyanti ye vidyam upasate tato bhuya evate tamo ya'u vidyayam rataha. So andham means blindness or gross ignorance. Tama, darkness, pravishanti, enter into, yea, those who avidyam, nescience, upasate. Those who worship nescience enter into the darkest region of ignorance. But then, says, bhuya, still more, are they, who are engaged in the culture of so-called knowledge. So the explanation that Prabhupada gives is as of a snake, deadly snake that has a jewel in its head. I mean, it look very attractive, but then because of that attraction, then I get bit by the snake. So one may feel complacent because one is culturing all kinds of information, but because it doesn't lead to the ultimate goal, because it's disconnected, therefore it's actually harmful. So appreciated what you were saying about it not being connected. When it's not connected, knowledge is not knowledge, it's actually nescience. Yes?
What I felt is that it says the real intelligence is to be connected, and that is the source of all your knowledge and happiness and
Real
peace.
knowledge means to be connected, and that's the source of knowledge and peace.
Peace.
Yes. And what is the word used for connection in the verse? It's good it's not there right now, so you have to remember. Yeah, yuktasya. Same idea, yoga, huge. The connection has to be there. We're making a comeback. Here we are. Okay. What else did you hear? Go to the translation, please. Perfect. Any other thing?
Hare Krishna. What I notice is that intelligence and the steady mind are put on the same level. So you can have intelligence, but if you don't have a steady mind, you're still not there. So both are needed.
Nice. Let's read it again. One who is not connected with the Supreme in Krishna consciousness can have neither transcendental intelligence nor a steady mind, without which there is no possibility of peace, and how can there be any happiness without peace? Okay, let's hear the purport. Unless one is in Krishna consciousness, there's no possibility of peace. So it is confirmed in the 5th chapter, 5.29, that when one understands that Krishna is the only enjoyer of all the good results of sacrifice and penance, that he is the proprietor of all universal manifestations, and that he is the real friend of all living entities, then only can one have real peace. Therefore, if one is not in Krishna consciousness, there cannot be a final goal for the mind. Disturbance is due to want of an ultimate goal, and when one is certain that Krishna is the enjoyer, proprietor, and friend of everyone and everything, then one can, with a steady mind, bring about peace. Therefore, one who is engaged without a relationship with Krishna is certainly always in distress and is without peace, however much he may make a show of peace and spiritual advancement in life. Krishna consciousness is a self-manifested, peaceful condition which can be achieved only in relationship with Krishna. I'll read the last sentence again. Krishna consciousness is a self-manifested, peaceful condition which can be achieved only in relationship with Krishna. There's a lot in that last sentence, just that it's self-manifested. That all you have to do really is bhakti, which is to connect to Krishna and find out the ways and means to do that. And then all these other symptoms, all the other qualities are naturally there. Just like Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is given the verse, Krishna Surya Sama Mayahaya Andakara. He says that where there's darkness, there's no light. Where there's light, there's no darkness. And then he compares Krishna to the sun. Wherever there's Krishna, then there's light. And so what is the answer to one's distresses and darkness is to get into the light. And where does the light come from? Krishna. So this verse is important because living entities, people, all living entities are looking for some state of happiness. And here's the solution. It's a matter of adjustment of the consciousness. One can adjust one's external circumstances and find satisfaction. That doesn't work. And the answer is that one has to adjust one's consciousness. But how? What is the ultimate state of consciousness? And that is mentioned in this verse. Let's see the translation again. It starts with the negative. One who is not connected with the Supreme in Krishna consciousness can have neither transcendental intelligence nor steady mind, without which there's no possibility of peace, and how can there be any happiness without peace? So this is giving the negative side and saying, what do you expect? If you don't have this connection, then you can't expect any happiness or any peace because you don't have the connection. So the answer is to connect to Krishna. Now let's look at the next verse. Indriyanam hi charatam yanmano nuvadiyate tadasya harati pragnam vairanavam ivambasi. Indriyanam, of the senses. He, certainly. Charatam, while roaming. Yat, with which. Manaha, the mind. Anuvidiyate, becomes constantly engaged. Tat, that. Asya, his. Harati, takes away. Pragnam, intelligence. Vayuhu, wind. Navam, a boat. Iva, like. Ampasi, on the water. Oh good, here comes an analogy. Analogies are helpful, aren't they? It's just, as soon as we hear it's like a story, able to connect the philosophical point very practically. As a strong wind sweeps away a boat on the water, even one of the roaming senses on which the mind focuses can carry away a man's intelligence. Let's say together. As a strong wind sweeps away a boat on the water, even one of the roaming senses on which the mind focuses can carry away a man's intelligence. Purport. But before we do the purport, what did you hear? And how did it strike you? Yes, Victoria.
It says even one, so it's not necessarily that.
Not necessarily all of them,
yeah,
even
all
one.
of them, even one, if you
One.
let it. So it tells me to be to stay very like alert and aware of what's going on.
Yes.
Not even allow even one.
Yoga is a state of heightened awareness of where our senses are going, and also being cautious, because after we hear this verse in purport, we'll understand how one can be dragged away at any time. What else did you hear? Yes, Shraddha.
Maharaj, I was struck by the word carried away. Because I was just thinking that how often we get carried away. Like you're sitting doing some work and suddenly there's a ping and then you find that you are on Facebook for several hours. Just completely carried away. So I was relating to that.
Yeah, the mind can be easily carried away. I notice even sometimes when I'm reading that I'll read 3 sentences and then I realize that my mind was actually thinking about something else, so I have to go back and read it again, and I'm amazed that I was actually physically able to read it without comprehending anything, because I wasn't aware of it. I was aware of something else. So, Hare Krishna, Mahabhavi, welcome. Great to see you here. So, yes, it's important to be aware of how the indriyas, the senses, are acting and where they're going. What else did you hear? Bali.
So we can remember the example of Savari Muni, how he was meditating in the deep of the water and just seeing the agitation of the fish, he contemplated on the sexual activities and then he fell down. So one sense, by that, he just like Prabhupada says here, it can carry away by constantly meditating on that, because it will drive away from you. So we have to be very, very, very alert in all the time.
Yes, thank you. Practical example, Savari Muni. And also Krishna mentions in the Gita there's a cycle that takes place when contemplating the objects of the senses, then we develop attachment for them. And then from attachment, try to enjoy that, and can't enjoy it, anger arises, then we become overwhelmed and forget our position, our constitutional position. So we must stay fixed in consciousness constantly without being dragged away by the senses. This is the state of being fixed. What else did you hear? Anything else from the verse? Any impression? Let's read it again. Yes, Hansa Priya.
Hare Krishna. So the word stuck to me was a favorable wind. Because like in the TV we see the forecast people, they know how to read the forecast. So you need to know someone who could tell you where the favorable wind is going to be, or you follow somebody who knows, so that way you can take advantage of it.
Let's see the verse. I want to see that part again. Thank you. It's as a strong wind down sweeps away a boat on the water, even one of the roaming senses on which the mind focuses can carry away a man's intelligence. Let's say it together again. As a strong wind sweeps away a boat on the water, even one of the roaming senses on which the mind focuses can carry away a man's intelligence. Yeah, carried away. There's an intelligence, he's got it. It's like, okay, we're out of here. Just take it out. It's like, where'd my intelligence go? It was carried away by one of the roaming senses. Roaming senses. It's a roamer. Look up roaming, please. Who had their hand up? Yeah, Bali.
So actually I was looking in one of the survey 2 days ago in my dentist appointment, and there it was showing in the TV that what is the 4 things the man carried away. And I was looking at 2, I forgot actually 2 is in my mind, which is one said the attitude, man changes, and the second one is the TV channel. So I was, and he was giving an example, the reason people changes is the mind is so flickering, and they just wanted to hook into some channels. So he was saying, make the best so that people hook into your. So that's why I'm saying the senses also, we are changing into different sense objects and we are hooked into one which is our dear or more interesting.
But I didn't understand the example of the TV channels.
So TV channel, people, those who watch the TV, they frequently change the TV channel.
Just click, click, click.
Click, click, click. Oh, I am today ABC Fox, and that is the thing, number one changes people do. So he was saying that why they do changes is because they are not hooked into any of the channel yet, because they are looking for something better. So he is proposing that you make the best so that people hook into your channel when they come into you.
Oh, I see. Yeah. Make the best to attract them to your channel.
So we have to, so many people like us, maybe sometime we are hooked into many sense objects, but somehow or other, Kalevale Koshale, we have to make Krishna as the best so that we hook into him.
Yeah, and it's easy for the mind to reject it also. Like say, let's read Bhagavad Gita and the mind's, I want to do something else. Like an impetuous child who wants to do some other thing. But sadhana means that we do the practice anyway, even if the mind isn't willing at the time. Because once we do that again and again, we can see that there's a superior quality to it. The mind actually finds some satisfaction through the connection. Just by reading Bhagavad Gita every day, one can feel satisfaction. And you can feel in the aftermath of reading that there's a sense of superior intelligence that you get just from the words that Krishna spoke and that you read, that you feel satisfied. Whereas with other subject matters, there's a kind of agitation. In the act of viewing it, one may feel some immediate satisfaction, but afterwards the mind feels agitated because it's not connected. Ayuktasya. And we heard that in the previous verse. If you engage in an activity that's not connected with Krishna, then you won't feel satisfaction. And you also won't gain that intelligence. And here it's being very specifically pointed out. As a strong wind sweeps away a boat on the water, even one of the roaming senses on which the mind focuses can carry away man's intelligence. Shamalangi.
And I was thinking that this is actually a warning for everyone. It's not that for the beginners or somebody who's not practicing. It's for each and everyone, how advanced you are. So because it's a strong wind, very, very strong. So the roaming senses are so strong that it can sway away anyone.
Yes. Yeah, very important to know this. Okay, let's hear the purport. We're ayuktasya. Okay. Oh, and let's hear about roaming, yeah. Even one of the roaming senses, let's say this is what the definition of roaming is.
So there are multiple definitions.
Give us the best one. Multiple channels, we want the best.
So this is with respect to the mind or thoughts. Drift along without dwelling on anything in particular.
Drift along without dwelling on anything particular. That's Facebook. Okay. Unless all of the senses are engaged in the service of the Lord. That's a powerful clause to start off this purport, isn't it? It's a little demanding. Unless all of the senses gets our attention, are engaged in the service of the Lord. Everyone repeat that clause. Okay, now we're curious about what will happen next. Even one of them engaged in sense gratification can deviate the devotee from the path of transcendental advancement. And Victoria brought this up. She noticed it's even one sense. Not all of them have to be fully engaged, just one of them. As mentioned in the life of Maharaj Ambarisha, all of the senses must be engaged in Krishna consciousness, for that is the correct technique for controlling the mind. And what is the correct technique for controlling the mind? Okay, so what about Maharaj Ambarish? He was, from all external points of view, materialistically encumbered because he was a king and he had all access to all kinds of material sense gratification. What kind of things do kings get? Actually, the same things that people in the suburbs get nowadays down, because people want to live like kings. Actually, they live better than kings in a lot of ways. I don't think kings had air conditioning. Of course, they may have somebody to fan them. People nowadays, you have a little house in the suburbs and you have indoor plumbing, hot water anytime you want it. Take it for granted though, right? But people want to live like kings. But what did kings get? Wealth? Yeah, how much wealth did they have? How much? Yeah, unlimited. It's just like there's no limit to what they can spend probably, right? Just at any time, you can get whatever you want. Just kind of like Amazon Prime, right? What else to kings? Yes?
They got respect.
Respect, yes. Naturally, everyone respects the king. In fact, it's mentioned that many artisans would be commissioned by kings to make paintings or sculptures and so forth, or write poetry. And however, they would generally conform their artistry to satisfy the particular mindset of the king. Because, first of all, they wanted to be paid, and second of all, they didn't want to be killed. And so there's a sort of a mandatory way in which kings would get respect. And from their very birth, from the law of primogeniture, means that they would just be bequeathed the kingdom because of their birth. So from the very beginning, they had all respect given to them by everybody. Whether it was artificial or whether it was real, hardly matters because that was their situation. So yeah, kings have all respect. What else? They're powerful, yes. They can order wars, they can put people in jail, they can do whatever they like, right? All kinds of power. No office time? Yeah, they didn't have to go to the office. It's, yes?
Some kings like Rama, they set very high standards.
Oh, you're mentioning Lord Ramachandra?
Yes.
That he had a higher standard? Yes. So, vain. So, okay, so Maharaj Ambarish is mentioned again and again as an example. He had all facility for sense gratification. He could have used everything for his own purposes, but he didn't. He engaged it, and he also didn't walk away from it. That's another important point. Because this idea of renunciation is the other side of the material concept. On one side, there's attachment, that I'm attached to something that's not mine, and you'll never be happy in that. And there's a kind of morality that grows up around this concept that I'm the enjoyer. And this is what Prabhupada used to call honor among thieves. People get together to steal something from a bank, and they rob the bank, and then they run away to a private place, and then they say, okay, let's divide this very honestly. And it's something they just stole. And of course, when somebody's a thief, they're always worried about apprehension. There's no point at which they feel that they can actually enjoy the thing, because it's not theirs. So in the outset of the Sri Upanishad, we hear Isavasamidang sarvam. Krishna owns everything. It's not yours. It belongs to Isha, the controller. Are you the controller? Look very carefully. No, you're not. So those who consider everything belongs to the Lord, I'll engage it in His service, and I'll accept for my own sense gratification only those things, tena tyaktena bunjita, which are set aside. They're obviously given to me as my quota. And furthermore, Bhagavatam says that I use it to maintain myself so that I can do service. That kind of mentality doesn't entangle one. So Maharaj Ambarish, although he had full facility, he didn't reject it all, and he also didn't engage in enjoying it for his own senses. But what did he do? He used everything for the service of Krishna. Can you remember any of the ways in which Maharaj Ambarish engaged? Okay, so find the verses in the shloka book so we can put them up. What is it? 9:4:18, please. Within 7 seconds or less, or your money back from this class. That's pretty good. Oops. 5, 6, 6.5, 6 3/4. This is nerve-wracking. Look at that, he found it in 7 seconds or less. Okay, so go down to the translation, please. This describes how Maharaj Ambarish used everything as a king. Maharaj Ambarish always engaged his mind in meditating upon the lotus feet of Krishna. Is that possible? Yes. How is it possible? Chanting, how else is it possible? Meditating, I'm talking specifically, how is it possible to meditate on Krishna's lotus feet? How is it possible? The reason it's possible is because Krishna has lotus feet. I'm being practical because there are philosophical systems that start with the premise that God has no form. And in the Gita, Krishna says, this is a difficulty because what are you going to think about? And eventually, the mind seeks form. You can tell this by riding on an airplane. If you get on an airplane 4 hours or more, maybe you go 9 hours, 12 hours, and your senses start... I remember I was coming into San Francisco from Japan once, and the captain came on and he said, So we're getting ready to perform our landing ceremony, and we'll be down and touching down on terra firma within 20 minutes. I thought, terra firma, what's that? And I looked it up. It's like, oh, it's Earth. And I looked out the window, and I saw the Bay Area, trees and people and everything. And I realized that my senses, being locked up in that fuselage for 12 hours, were hankering for some contact with variety, see something. And this is a natural state, according to the philosophy of Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, to want to engage in variety. And to the senses have their objects. They need to be engaged. So if I don't have a spiritual object to meditate on, then my mind by default will go to the variety in the material world, the material variety, which is a reflection. And there are many sights and that one can hook onto in the material world where the mind will think, oh, I'm going to look at this. And they won't be satisfying. So we have the deity of Krishna. You can notice that when you go to a Hare Krishna temple, for example, this one, and you walk in, it's an unusual scene. I mean, not all places. There are some churches that have some imagery. In Catholicism, there's a little more imagery than in some places. When we were at Saddleback Church recently in Southern California, we couldn't find any imagery. There was a cross, but that wasn't enough. I mean, it represents something, part of their philosophy, that God made a sacrifice. But there's no image for the mind to hook onto. But if you walk into a Hare Krishna temple, there's definite imagery. Oh, I was saying Catholicism. You walk into some of the Catholic churches. I went to a cathedral, Notre Dame Cathedral in Montreal. And there I saw there are many saints, and there are statues all around, the church, where you can go around and see the personality and see their form, whatever particular paraphernalia they carried around with them and things like that. And it gives the mind some engagement. In Krishna consciousness, we have the form of the deity. And we say deity because there's an authorized process through which one can invite Krishna to come and manifest himself. And he does. And this is palpable. It's something that one can experience from oneself. And also there are descriptions of the form of Krishna, and when those are presented according to scripture, one can then have a place to place one's mind. So Maharaj Ambarish was always engaged in meditating on the lotus feet of Krishna. In fact, for those who are interested in the process of deity worship, there's a whole chapter on it in the 11th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, spoken by Krishna himself, where he describes the process of deity worship. And he gives the various details of that. And one of the points is that the worshipper should place his head on Krishna's lotus feet. Krishna says this himself. So the pujari has permission to actually, in the process of course you have to be qualified, come to the point of second initiation, and then you can worship the deity. Then you can actually place your head on the lotus feet of Krishna. This is Krishna's advice. So Maharaj Ambarish always engages his mind in meditating upon the lotus feet of Krishna. Then words are very important. He used them to describe the glories of the Lord. His hands, now pay attention because there'll be a quiz without availability of this verse. His hands in cleansing the Lord's temple. Let's hear it for all the cleaners. And his ears in hearing the words spoken by Krishna or about Krishna. He engaged his eyes in seeing the deity of Krishna, Krishna's temples, and Krishna's places like Mathura and Vrindavan. He engaged his senses in touching the bodies of the Lord's devotees. He engaged his senses of smell in smelling the fragrance of tulsi offered to the Lord, and engaged his tongue in tasting the Lord's prasad. He engaged his legs in walking to the holy places and the temples of the Lord, his head in bowing down before the Lord, and all his desires in serving the Lord 24 hours a day. Indeed, Maharaj Ambrish never desired anything for his own sense gratification. He engaged all his senses in devotional service, in various engagements related to the Lord. This is the way to increase attachment for the Lord and be completely free from all material desires. Case solved. Yes. Ramananda Saka.
Just one comment. In this, it's written that he engaged his hands in cleansing the Lord's temple, and he's a king, and he must be having a lot of servants, and so he could have easily asked his servants, engaged his servants to clean the temple, but it looks like he himself did that job.
Yes,
and
it's a very satisfying service to cleanse the Lord's temples, to wash the pots, to as Prabhupada used to say, when you clean the temple, you clean your heart. And one can feel that. It's not an ordinary activity. So what are some of the ways you engage in senses, particularly? Just recount. Tongue and tasting Krishna's prasadam. And you look joyful in bringing that up. Let's use the microphones, pass them around. Tell us what you were thinking about when you said that.
Prasadam.
Well, what kind of prasadam? Because remember, it's Ekadashi.
Ekadashi prasadam.
Ekadashi prasadam. Very good. What a diplomatic answer. Okay. Yes, but you could. There's a way in which prasadam, it's fully transcendental. So those who honor it and they take the prasad of the Lord, the sense of taste becomes satisfied. It needs to be satisfied because the tongue is the most voracious and difficult to control. It can, any time, it can demand. It can be the middle of the night, it can be any time, and just say, feed me, I want this now. And it's like, no, it's like, yes. And it can overwhelm, the tongue can overwhelm a person and drag in a certain direction. And, it's hard, very difficult to control the tongue, but by honoring the Lord's prasadam, because it's Krishna himself, the tongue becomes satisfied and controlled, because it's serving Krishna, it's service to Krishna to honor prasadam. And so that's how the tongue can be controlled. And this is very difficult, even for great yogis. They can lose it with the tongue. But the bhaktas, because they honor prasadam, can control the most voracious of all the senses, the tongue. Yes, taking prasadam with the tongue. What else? What is it? 1, 2, 3. Okay.
So he used his legs to walk to the temple and also to the holy places of
pilgrimage. Same as what Hansapri was saying. So legs are a sense. They're a working sense, and they need to be engaged. And there's lots of places that you can walk to. But if you use your legs to walk to the temple, to walk to the holy places and walk around, then the legs become satisfied and they're engaged in Krishna's service. Good. Yes?
He used his mind to meditate on the lotus feet of the Lord.
He used his mind to meditate on the lotus feet of the Lord. Why did you think of that one?
Because it was the first one.
His first one. Yeah, his mind to meditate on the lotus feet of the Lord, and there are verses about that. Yet pada pankacha palasa vilasya bhaktya karmashayam gratitam udgratayanti santa. This verse says that the devotees of the Lord, because they meditate on the petal-like, beautiful bud, he compares the toes of Krishna to be like the buds of lotus flowers. And so he says, yet pada pankacha palasa vilasa bhaktya karmashrayam gratitam udgratayanti santa, that he's able to overcome the the bhakta is able to overcome the hard knots of material existence. The first number? 4:22:39. 4:22:39. Let's look at this verse. You'll be impressed. I'll say, please repeat. Yat pada pankaja palasha vilasa bhaktya. Karamashayam gratitam udgratayanti santaha. Tadvam narikta matayo yatayo piruddha. Sroto ganastamaranam bhajavasudevam. Yat, whose, pada, feet, pankaja, lotus, palasha, petals or toes, vilasa, enjoyment, bhaktya, by devotional service, karma, fruit of activities, ashayam, desire, gratitam, hard knot, udgratayanti, root out, santaha, devotees, tat, that, vat, like, na, never, riktamatayaha, persons devoid of devotional service, yataha, ever increasingly trying, api, even though, ruddha, stopped, shrotaganaha, the waves of sense enjoyment, tam, unto him, aranam, worthy to take shelter, bhaja, engage in devotional service, Vasudevam, under Krishna, the son of Vasudeva. Okay, brace yourself. Here comes the translation. I'll say and then we'll say together. The devotees who are always engaged in the service of the toes of the lotus feet of the Lord can very easily overcome hard knotted desires for fruitive activities. Because this is very difficult, the non-devotees, the jnanis and yogis, although trying to stop the waves of sense gratification, cannot do so. Therefore, you are advised to engage in the devotional service of Krishna, the son of Vasudeva. Altogether, the devotees who always engage in the service of the toes of the lotus feet of the Lord can very easily overcome hard knotted desires for fruitive activities. Because this is very difficult, the non-devotees, the jnanis and yogis, although trying to stop the waves of sense gratification, cannot do so. Therefore, you are advised to engage in the devotional service of Krishna, the son of Vasudeva. So this is a definite meditation on the lotus feet of the Lord. Let's hear the purport. There are three kinds of transcendentalists trying to overcome the influence of the modes of material nature, the jnanis, yogis, and bhaktas. All of them attempt to overcome the influence of the senses, which is compared to the incessant waves of a river. The waves of a river flow incessantly, and it is very difficult to stop them. Similarly, the waves of desire for material enjoyment are so strong that they cannot be stopped by any process other than bhakti yoga. The bhaktas, by their transcendental devotional service unto the lotus feet of the Lord, become so overwhelmed with transcendental bliss that automatically their desires for material enjoyment stop. The jnanis and yogis who are not attached to the lotus feet of the Lord simply struggle against the waves of desire. They are described in this verse as riktamatayaha, everyone say, which means devoid of devotional service. In other words, the jnanis and yogis, although trying to be free from the desires of material activities, actually become more and more entangled in false philosophical speculation or strenuous attempts to stop the activities of the senses. As stated previously, Vasudeve Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Prayojitaha Janayashu Vairagyam Jnanam Chayata Haitukam. Here also the same point is stressed. Bhaja Vasudevam indicates that one who is engaged in the loving service of Krishna, the son of Vasudeva, can very easily stop the waves of desires. As long as one continues to try to artificially stop the waves of desires, he will certainly be defeated. That is indicated in this verse. Desires for fruitive activities are strongly rooted, but the trees of desire can be uprooted completely by devotional service because devotional service employs superior desire. One can give up inferior desires when engaged in superior desires. To try to stop desires is impossible. One has to desire the supreme in order to be entangled, not be entangled in inferior desires. I'll say again. One has to desire the supreme in order not to be entangled in inferior desires. Jnanis maintain a desire to become one with the supreme, but such desire is also considered to be kama, lust. Similarly, the yogis desire mystic power, and that is also kama. And the bhaktas, not being desirous of any sort of material enjoyment, become purified. There is no artificial attempt to stop desire. Desire becomes a source of spiritual enjoyment under the protection of the toes of the lotus feet of the Lord. It is stated herein by the Kumaras that the lotus feet of Lord Krishna are the ultimate reservoir of all pleasure. One should therefore take the ultimate reservoir of pleasure. One should therefore take shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord instead of trying unsuccessfully to stop desires for material enjoyment. As long as one is unable to stop the desire for material enjoyment, there is no possibility of becoming liberated from the entanglement of material existence. It may be argued that the waves of a river are incessantly flowing and they cannot be stopped, but the waves of the river flow toward the sea. When the tide comes over the river, it overwhelms the flowing of the river, and the river itself becomes overflooded. Then the waves from the sea become more prominent than the waves from the river. This is called an estuary. There's a way in which freshwater rivers come into the ocean, but at high tide, then the ocean backs up the waves of the river. It goes back. In fact, there are all kinds of living entities that stay in that area because they can live in fresh water or in salt water, because that area is constantly changing. It may be argued that the waves of the river are incessantly flowing and that they cannot be stopped, but the waves of the river flow toward the sea. When the tide comes over the river, it overwhelms the flowing of the river, and the river itself becomes overflooded. Beautiful poetry, isn't it? Then the waves from the sea become more prominent than the waves from the river. Similarly, a devotee with intelligence plans so many things for the service of the Lord in Krishna consciousness that stagnant material desires become overflooded by the desire to serve the Lord. As confirmed by Yamunacharya, since he has been engaged in the service of the Lord, lotus feet of the Lord, there is always a current of newer and newer desires flowing to serve the Lord, so much so that the stagnant desire of sex life becomes very insignificant. Yamunacharya even says that he spits on such desires. Bhagavad Gita 2.59 also confirms, Param drishva nivartate. The conclusion is that by developing a loving desire for the service of the lotus feet of the Lord, we subdue all material desires for sense gratification. It's a pretty strong case, don't you think? It makes sense. Back to the Gita, please. Maharaja Ambarish is the emblem, and it's mentioned in this Bhagavad Gita verse that we just read. And now we go on to the next verse. If you'll just keep going. So, the essence of the first two verses we heard are from the Gita. The first one said, No mumbling. Take the microphone. And if you don't know, say it anyway and go down in flames. Okay, go ahead.
It talked about the need to be connected to Krishna in case you want to have any sort of happiness or peace.
Yes, the need to be connected to Krishna. This is so important because I may consider how to become happy in any given moment, in any given day or week or month or lifetime, right? And here's the answer. To become connected to Krishna. Because without it, one can't become happy. What else did you hear in the first two verses?
The next verse we heard about even one of the roaming senses can drag our intelligence.
Yes, and we can notice the ways in which the senses drag us from one place to the next, and even one of them can, just as a boat is swept away in water, sweep away our intelligence. It can carry it away. Jim's like, oh, where are we going? I have no idea. It's just not here. Somewhere else altogether. Yes?
Actually, when it talked about carried away, I was not thinking of this pose that you made. I was more thinking of being dragged away, like being carried away in a flood or something like that.
Well, I was thinking more like a kidnapping. Sometimes they'll throw a bag over the guy's head and throw him in the car. Like, where was he? He was carried away. So the senses are like that too. In fact, Shankaracharya mentions in one of his poems to Lord Nrsingadev about how the senses are like highwaymen, highway robbers. They just stop you on the road. You're driving along, you're thinking everything's okay. I'm going to get to see Aunt Molly. And next thing's like, okay, stop the car, pull over, give me all your stuff. And then he said they take all the things away, then they throw me into a pit. I mean, it's actually really scary if you're held up suddenly at gunpoint and all your things are taken away. And then not only that, then they throw you into a pit where you can't get out. Blind wells are scary because nobody can hear you. You're out in the middle of a field. So he said, that's how my senses are. They're like these highway robbers. That they hold me up, they take all my stuff, and then they just leave me stranded in a very scary situation. So something to be concerned about. Yes?
No, I was thinking about two things. One was that you also mentioned that once you had that experience going to Mexico or some place like that.
Being held up?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The second thing I was thinking was that as in cell phones, when you are roaming, you have to pay more price, more charges.
Yeah.
Similarly, in your devotional service, if you let your senses roam, then it's a very heavy price that you have to pay.
That's right. Just consider the roaming fees for letting your senses roam. Okay, let's do this verse. I'll say, please repeat. Tasmad yasya mahabaho nigrihitani sarvashaha Indriyan indriyartebhyas tasya prajna pratishtita tasmat. Therefore, we're being treated to a therefore. Because sometimes before a therefore verse, we're sort of left like, what do I do now? But now we're going to get the satisfaction of the therefore. Yasya. Whose? Mahabaho, O mighty armed one. Nigrihitani, so curbed down. Sarvashaha, all around. Indriyani, the senses. Indriyartebhyaha, from sense objects. Tasya, his. Prajna, intelligence. Pratishtita, fixed. Therefore, O mighty armed, one whose senses are restrained from their objects is certainly of steady intelligence. Altogether, therefore, O almighty armed, one whose senses are restrained from their objects is certainly of steady intelligence. Restrained. Purport. One can curb the forces of sense gratification only by means of Krishna consciousness, or engaging all the senses in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. As enemies are curbed by superior force, the senses can similarly be curbed, not by any human endeavor, but only by keeping them engaged in the service of the Lord. One who has understood this, that only by Krishna consciousness one is really established in intelligence, and that one should practice this art under the guidance of a bona fide spiritual master, is called sadaka, or a suitable candidate for liberation. Ooh, yes.
Just thinking, Prabhu, how we have been hearing that the senses we get carried away by the senses, but Krishna's lotus feet it's so much pleasure is there in that. And we also know that devotional service is susukam kartum avyayam, it's joyfully performed. But as a practitioner, I always feel that it's not something I want, because it feels that controlling the tongue, especially, for example, if we should not talk about others, or it seems like a great austerity. So even though Prabhupada says that for yogis, they try to control like this, like that, but to me also I feel like that. It's like endless, and there will not be a time when I'll be performing devotional service as a natural course of action. So, but I know you always say that 40 years, but still, to struggle like that for those 40 years, or will there be a time when I will like, oh, this is it, and all my happiness comes only from Krishna consciousness, like how Prabhupada says.
Yeah,
how do we get there?
That time will definitely come, because there's a natural flow of energy that comes from connecting with Krishna that overwhelms the senses, just as when the ocean backs up, it overwhelms the river. So that experience will be there without doubt. In the stage of sadhana or practice, one has to take shelter of another kind of attitude, and that is that despite the fact that I'm not experiencing that overwhelming happiness from Krishna consciousness, I'm determined to go on with the practice, knowing that I've calculated the various ways in which I can invest my energy in this life. And as given in the equation by Rishabhadeva in the 5th canto of the Bhagavatam, where he says, Tapo divyam putrakayena sattvam shudyad yasmad brahma saukyam tvanantam, that if you invest in divine austerity, then the return is that you'll get unlimited happiness. Whereas he said all the other kinds of ways in which you can engage your senses in this world that are inferior are available to everybody, including pigs. And so you can calculate and just see that there's a difference in quality of investment, and be intelligent. You have to use your intelligence. You may not have taste, but you can use your intelligence to understand that I have the power to invest. It's a little bit of responsibility, human life, because you have some freedom. It doesn't come without a cost. Freedom means there can be some anxiety involved, because now you're given a choice. Now you can execute it whatever way you like. And there's an exhilaration in it also if you understand that the intelligence can be finely developed to understand the difference in investments. So if you give yourself to tapo divyam, there's a kind of taste in that also, in the stage of practice, where you understand that I'm not there yet, but I know by this investment that it will come. Just like if you're learning an instrument. You know from previous experience, hopefully, that by a little bit of practice every day, consistent over time, that you can improve by 1% at a time. If you improve 1% every day, by the end of the year, you'll be 37%. You'll be 37 times better than you were when you started. That's a lot. And so there's a kind of direction by the intelligence in sadhana bhakti, where you have shraddha, or faith in the scriptures. And that faith means that the scriptures are speaking to you from a superior position. Understand that with your intelligence. There's a superior voice coming to me through the scriptures, and they're giving me good direction. And now the taste comes from, I'm going to follow it even though I don't have a taste. I'm going to follow it by my intelligence, understanding this is superior to the information or the impulses given by my senses. And then you just follow it. And that's kind of exciting. I mean, the excitement of practice, taking up a new discipline where you're starting from a position where you don't have any proficiency at all. But by your intelligence, you understand, because I'm going to invest every day half an hour, no matter what, I know that in a week I may perceive a slight increase in proficiency. And then from that I can extrapolate that if I keep going, I'll be better. How much better will I be in a year, in 2 years, or in 40 years, and so forth. And so this is in the stage of sadhana bhakti, one has to be fixed in that kind of a conception. But the taste will definitely come. There's no question about it. It's a natural situation to be fully overwhelmed by the association of Krishna and all the different aspects of his personality. That will definitely come. Yes? Jeev Krishna Das A. Bishwas.
Hare Krishna. It's a really nice definition of what's a sadaka, a suitable candidate for liberation. It also gets my mind excited because I want to be liberated. And I was thinking, well, what is the liberation for a bhakta? Is to actually be free from the desire to be liberated, which is just another trick for the mind. And I thought that was quite nice.
Yeah. And tell us more about the sadaka, the suitable candidate.
Well, a sadaka is someone who figured out what is said before, is that only by Krishna consciousness one is really established in intelligence that we should practice this art. So it's a practice of an art under guidance of a bona fide spiritual master. So we're following some directions.
Yeah, similar to what I was just saying also, right? Having a faith in superior direction. And this is not blind faith, but it's, for instance, if you go to a doctor, say it's if you're part of Kaiser, if you want a primary care physician, you can go through and you can look at all the different biographies of each one of the primary care physicians. You can interview them and find out, what is your background? Did you go to school? Did you study this? It's like, yeah, they studied it. They're board certified and all different things. And then you can also get the testimonials from others. Yes, I worked with this person. They gave me really good advice. They had a good bedside manner. They helped me and so forth. And once you fix your mind, you say, okay, this will be my primary care physician. Then you just go there and you say, all right, listen, I got this thing. What do I do? It's like, you do this, this, and this, and that. And it's like, I have no idea if it's going to work or not. I didn't study the science, nor do I have time. But yeah, this person specialized in it, so I have faith. So I just do it. And in sadhana bhakti, there's faith in the scripture, that by following this, and the spiritual master is somebody who's imbibed that and has practiced it and has practical ways of explaining it so that one can apply it in one's own life. And also as an example of it, because you need to see an example. Does it actually work? You go to a doctor and it's like, how are your patients doing? Every one of them died. So then you're like, okay, thanks. I'll check out somebody else. But if you go to a doctor and it's like, yeah, this person cured me, cured everybody else, there's a good track record, then it's like, okay, I'm going to stick around. I'll be with this. This is why, you want to find somebody, like Prabhupada means the master at whose feet all other masters sit. You want to see some masters sitting at the feet of Prabhupada. Are any of his disciples, did they get anything from it? It's like, no, nobody. There's no other person Prabhupada qualified. Then why would you follow him? If all the people who followed him for 40, 50 years didn't get anything, then why would you do that also? You couldn't krame, step by step, by following the process that he gave, get something, then what is the efficacy of that? It's a different kind of philosophy. So, yes, that kind of faith and investment in a superior authority, understanding what that authority is, what the tradition is, how it comes down, how it can be applied, how the exhilaration is like, I can do this too. I can also become elevated to the highest position if I follow strictly the process that's been given. And even at the point at which I feel overwhelmed by the senses, I know I have faith in the process. I have faith in the people who are giving it to me, and therefore I feel satisfaction that I'm already liberated. Green mango or ripe mango, mango's a mango. If you get on the team and you're the worst guy on the team, and they never let you play, that's possible. And it's like, okay, you're on the team, but let's get it straight. You're never playing. You're never getting in this game. Who cares? You're on the team. If the team wins the championship, it's like, all right, Schnicky, get over here. You get the ring, you know. You're on the team anyway. So sadhakas are on the team. It's like, okay, you may be a neophyte, you may not be very advanced, but it's like, look it, I believe in this. I'm in it because I may not be a great player, I may not be very advanced, but I'm sticking on the team because I know this is the winning team. So this is the sadhaka, one who has understood this, that only by Krishna consciousness is one really established in intelligence, and that one should practice this art under the guidance of a bona fide spiritual master, is called a sadhaka. Yeah, if a sadhaka is an official thing, it's a very elevated position because you've actually entered into the class. It means adau shraddha tata sadhu sangha. In the beginning, there's some faith. It's like, okay, I believe in this. I appreciate it. Okay, how much do you appreciate it? Adau shraddha tata sadhu sangha. I appreciate it so much, I'm going to go hang out with these people, with the bhaktas. How much more do you appreciate it? I'm going to try to be like them. How do you do that? You enter into bhajana kriya. It means, it's like, okay, I'm going to also make a vow that I'm going to follow this. Then you really are sadhaka. That's the bhajana kriya position. It's like, okay, I'm initiated. Now you're really a sadhaka. Because you're held to a certain standard. You can't just say, well, all right, it's all right. I could do one day, one thing, another, because I really didn't make a vow. I can do whatever I want. But bhajana kriya is serious. It means you got in and you say, okay, I'm in the class. I'm going to be graded on this. That what I say counts. What the tests count. Everything counts now. You're in the class. It's not, I'm just monitoring the class. I don't care. I'm not going to get a grade. But you actually get graded on whether you're following or not because you made a vow and your word is your bond and you have to follow it now. That's serious. That's the life of a sadhaka. And Krishna appreciates it. In fact, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu spoke about this to Sanatana Goswami and to Haridas Thakur, and he said, at the time that one makes this vow, he becomes as good as me. He becomes as good as me. And Mahaprabhu mentions that sadhaka is a different kind of person. He's not an ordinary person, he's a sadhaka. A sadhaka means you get a sadhaka deha. Your body changes. You've entered into the process, and now it's not just like an ordinary material body, but it's a sadhaka deha. It's a body for practice. What's your body for? All the senses. I'm using it in the service of Krishna. And therefore, it takes on a special quality. It becomes transcendentalized. All your senses become transcendentalized. Even if you're not perfect yet, even if you're still struggling along with different impulses that are coming, your overarching desire in life and intention, more like, is that I'm following this. And so you go off the side. I'm coming back to the center. You went off the side again. So what? I'm coming back to the center. I know where the center is. I believe in the center. And this Prabhupada brings up in 331 in the Bhagavad Gita, which we'll see in 7 seconds or less. Earn your money back. Ye me matam idam nityam anutishtanti manava. In the purport, which we'll look at briefly, Prabhupada writes, the injunction of the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna is the essence of all Vedic wisdom and therefore is eternally true without exception. That helps. As the Vedas are eternal, so this truth of Krishna consciousness is also eternal. One should have firm faith in this injunction without envying the Lord. There are many philosophers who write comments on the Bhagavad Gita but have no faith in Krishna. They will never be liberated from the bondage of fruit of action. But an ordinary man with firm faith in the eternal injunctions of the Lord, even though unable to execute such orders, becomes liberated from the bondage of the law of karma. In the beginning of Krishna consciousness, one may not fully discharge the injunctions of the Lord, but because one is not resentful of this principle and works sincerely without consideration of defeat and hopelessness, he will surely be promoted to the stage of pure Krishna consciousness. And this is the attitude of the sadaka. And it is something that Krishna encourages again and again. And now, because it's 10 minutes after 9, we're going to stand up for 1 minute. Everyone stand up. Now you can reach your hands high into the air, and as loud as you can say, Gauranga. That is the best first Gauranga I've ever heard, because usually I have to say, that's not very loud. Okay, let's try it one more time. 1, 2, 3. Okay, everyone at home is watching on the internet, wherever you are. If you're driving, lean out the window. Go out on your front porch, raise your hands in the air, and say, 1, 2, 3. Okay, we can sit down. Now we're intrigued. I mean, we're really intrigued because what we have going here is something unusual. We have words spoken by the person whom we consider to be the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And it's confirmed by great masters, historically, great teachers of yoga, bhakti, everything. They all say, yes, this is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And there are volumes of literature defining what is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So now, say we take that, and these words are coming to us. Let's look at the next verse from the Gita. Ooh. All say, please repeat. Ya nisha sarvabhutanam. Tasyam jagarti samyami. Yasyam jagrati bhutani. Sa nisha pashato munehe. Ya. What? Nisha is night. Sarva. All. Bhutanam. Of living entities. Tasyam. In that. Jagarti. Is wakeful. Samyami, the self-controlled. Yasyam, in which Jagrati are awake. Bhutani, all beings. Sa, that is. Nisha, night. Pashyataha, for the introspective. Munehe, sage. Translation. What is night for all beings is the time of awakening for the self-controlled, and the time of awakening for all beings is night for the introspective sage. Let's say together. What is night for all beings is the time of awakening for the self-controlled, and the time of awakening for all beings is night for the introspective sage. Purport. There are two classes of intelligent men. One is intelligent in material activities for sense gratification, and the other is introspective and awake to the cultivation of self-realization. I want to ask you, what does it mean to be intelligent in material activities for sense gratification? Give me some examples of intelligence, yes, for sense gratification.
You find out new ways of sense gratification, like increase the technology, Facebook, find out, like discover.
Right. Yes, there's a very intelligent ways of developing technology to enjoy. Yes.
The Bollywood stars, dancers, all.
What about them?
Well, they just show their bodily bodily. They are just exposing and showing that how you can, and through body, just the whole.
So a Bollywood movie
yes.
would show you, like, give you an example of, using your intelligence, how to supposedly enjoy the material world. Is that right? Okay. Yes.
You can hunt for bargains.
Meaning?
Like sometimes there's 2-for-1 sales.
Yes.
That's
okay.
That's intelligent.
You can clip coupons. Use your intelligence for that. Yes?
Trying to satisfy your unlimited desires, like one after the other.
Specifics?
Like make money, more and more money. Never satisfied with what you have. So
okay. Using your intelligence for material activities. Yeah, Harivamsha? One is intelligent in material activities for sense gratification. Yes.
Intelligence is the manifestation of mode of passion.
Yeah.
So ever expansive. It never stops. So
okay.
Every time it's expanding more and more things and figuring out ways, decision making, what to take in, what not to take in.
Okay. Yes. Yes.
I was thinking about the scientists. They are also like using their intelligence in a subtle way. They are actually satisfying their senses because they are exposing that they are so knowledgeable. They have so
and science. Sariputta Prabhu was saying in one of his lectures, there's a lot of scientific research, and the government puts a lot of money into it. And what they're most interested in, as the result of this scientific research, is how to make better bombs. They're not really, the government as an agency is generally not really interested in some breakthrough in understanding the origin of life, or was it from a big bang or from something else. But what they really like to have is superior weaponry. And I see now there's a thing going on, there's this thing between Russia and America. Russia has the mother of all bombs, but then America is the mother of all bombs, and then Russia says, yeah, but we have the father of all bombs. And there's an analysis as to which one can blow up more stuff. And recently America dropped a bomb in Afghanistan somewhere in the middle of the desert. And it's like, look at that. And Russia blew one up in the middle of somewhere. And it's like, yeah, but look at that. And the intelligence that goes into making a bomb, I mean, I can barely, it's like, what makes one bigger than the other? The Russian one is, according to scientists, is bigger explosion than the American bomb. Because one's the mother, one's the father. And there's this, this use of intelligence. There's an intelligence pool that goes into this. People studied really hard to figure out how to make it, and how to make it so it doesn't blow up before you drop it. And they had to figure out how to drop the mother of all bombs out of a cargo plane, because it's so heavy, the mother of all bombs, that they couldn't use a regular thing. They had to drop it out. And what does it take to transport that? And plus it costs $16 million for one bomb. And so there are two classes of intelligent men. One is intelligent in material activities for sense gratification. And that's definitely a kind of sense gratification. How to have more bombs. And figuring out how to make them blow. And I remember this as a kid. It always escalates whenever they give us fireworks as a kids. It's like, okay, just light a few things. And then the kids get together, let's put 3 of them together. What happens if you put a plate on top of it, And next thing you know, it's escalated, and the intelligence is engaged, definitely engaged. But for some kind of titillation of the senses in this material sphere, and it's very edifying for spiritual practitioners to know that there's 2 ways to use your intelligence, and it's completely valid to fully invest your intelligence in spiritual pursuits. It's not that because you're not investing your intelligence in the figuring out various ways to manipulate the material energy, that you're not advanced. It's just you're on a different side of the spectrum. One's in darkness and one's in light, and you're just using your intelligence in a different way. So it's really important to know these two classes. So let's hear it again. There are two classes of intelligent men. One is intelligent in material activities for sense gratification, and the other is an introspective and awake to the cultivation of self-realization. So this kind of using the intelligence for introspection, this is a very useful, powerful way to engage the intelligence. Activities of the introspective sage or thoughtful man are night for persons materially absorbed. Materialistic persons remain asleep in such a night due to their ignorance of self-realization. The introspective sage remains alert in the quote-unquote night of the materialistic men. The sage feels transcendental pleasure in the gradual advancement of spiritual culture, whereas the man in materialistic activities, being asleep to self-realization, dreams of varieties of sense pleasure, feeling sometimes happy and sometimes distressed in his sleeping condition. The introspective man is always indifferent to material happiness and distress. He goes on with his self-realization activities undisturbed by material reactions. Yes?
So yesterday I was with Preeti Sandarbha. We were leaving back to, going back home, and we were just noticing how...
Back home from the program.
From the program yesterday, and it was very late, like 10:30 maybe, and it was amazing because the amount of people who started coming after the night had passed was just increasing by the hour. And we saw that people were so intelligent about when to go, where to go, with whom to go, to increase the heightened amount of satisfaction they would derive from the night. And so it just kind of reminded me of this point that the introspective sage or the aspiring devotee knows when and where to execute devotional service, and their daytime is the night for...
Yeah. I wrote about this in that book I wrote. In one section, I remembered an incident when I was living in Los Angeles near the temple on Charnock Avenue. And I got up for Mangalartik on I guess it was a Sunday morning, and I was walking to the temple, and I just noticed that there were other people awake at that time, which was about 3:30 in the morning. I was walking to the temple, and I saw this SUV come by, and the people, and there was music going on in the car, and which was kind of unusual for that time, because you think of it as a time for meditative, pursuits and so forth. And they looked at me, walking down the street in a dhoti, with tilak on, heading for the temple, and I looked at them. I saw one of them, our eyes kind of caught, and we both had the same reaction. My reaction was, "What are you doing up at this time?" And they were thinking, "What are you doing up at this time?" And we were like, we're both up at that time, but for completely different reasons. They were just winding down, and I was just getting up. And I thought of this verse, just as you were last night, seeing how people were just coming out when it starts to get dark, and the mode of ignorance sets in, and then they can try to enjoy that mode. So this verse is instructive in that way, that you miss that entire world, actually. They don't get each other because they're on opposite sides. Any other thoughts? Yes, Hansapriya.
Actually, it reminds me the introspective devotees, they see, or person sees the glass half full, and the materialistic people see who wants to enjoy their intelligence and material thing, they always see half empty, and then chase for the happiness and missed out on the half full cup. And
that's true, but you could also put another dimension to that. And let me propose this and see if you agree. On the materialistic side, you can also be optimistic, Because we're talking about as optimism as kind of an attitude. Glass half full means there's an opportunity here. I can do more. Whatever I have, it's pretty good. So you can bolster yourself materially as well. In other words, you can have material intelligence and you can develop ways in which to increase your self-esteem, increase your desire to enjoy the material world, and become optimistic. You can be like Jarasandha. Jarasandha attacked Krishna, and he was defeated. In fact, his whole army was slaughtered. There's very graphic description of how much they were slaughtered. The slaughter was epic. I mean, there were rivers of blood. Krishna and Balaram just sliced them to pieces. All their armies, millions of men. And afterwards, he was walking away from it feeling really dejected. And some of his ministers came along and said, no, it was a fluke. You can do this. And how many times did he try? That's a lot. I mean, so materialistically, you can be defeated, and then you can again say, it was, you just don't see it. You got this. You keep trying. And people, all the time, there's, people try to make it in the Bollywood or whatever, and then they get rejected. People say, no, just keep trying. You're actually really beautiful. You'll probably make it. It's like, we can be optimistic on the material side and actually see it as the glass half full. And for a spiritual person, they can see the material world as the glass is half empty, because they see the material world as a lost cause. So what if it's half full? It doesn't make any difference, because what's filling it is not substantial. It's nothing there, right? I mean, so you could switch that on either side and say, as we were talking about sadhana, you say, okay, I may have some shortcomings and so forth, but we see the glass is half full, because even if you have a tiny bit in the glass, Krishna says, that's good. You'll never lose that. That's something that, so on that side, the devotees are always seeing the positive, optimistic. And that's true, because you get forward progress in devotional service. Neha bikramadashosti pratyavayana vidyate swalpam apyasya dharmasya trayate mahato bhayat. If you make a little endeavor in Krishna consciousness, you don't lose it. So there's a reason to be optimistic. See, the glass is half full. Yes. Thank you, Hansapriya.
Material intelligence and spiritual intelligence, I always remind of the very beautiful prose that Sri Rupa Goswami has written in his Padyavali, like different analogies he gives, like how a miser counts his coin back and forth. Similarly, a spiritually advanced person counts his verses back and forth. And then second thing he told, that how a lover is waiting for the love letter from his beloved. Similarly, a person, when my hand will shake when I take the Bhagavatam. And then the third one, like yuvatinam yatha yuni yunam cha yuvato yatha mano bhiramate tadvan mano me ramatam tvai. How a man is, boy is attracted to a girl and girl is attracted to boy. Similarly, when my full attention will be towards you, Krishna. So it's spiritual intelligence and material intelligence, we can see how they say in a contrast, and we can use the spiritual intelligence to advance.
Apramay, did you hear everything he said? Could you repeat some of it? Give him the microphone.
The last thing he said was how a boy is attracted to a girl, how a girl is attracted to a boy. Similarly, I want to be attracted like that to Krishna.
Yes. So he's saying in Padyavali that Rupa Goswami is making these analogies. This is the crossover point. So this is a really important point. And that is that the same kinds of impetus that a materialistic person has, a devotee can have as well. And Prabhupada brings this up, is that you have to have you have volition, you have desire, ambition, and so forth, but it has to be spiritualized. You have to have spiritual ambition. And the same kind of ways in which we see people execute or pursue their desires in the material world, when those are applied to the spiritual realm, they become very valuable. So it's not that we're zero. And he gives specific examples. One of the ones about getting a love letter, and there's some anticipation in that. So getting a message from a lover, and then the handshake, perspiration is coming. What's this letter going to say? Opening the letter and then reading, and then the voice is shaking, and there's this very there's a deep investment in the whole thing. And so he says, so let me read the Bhagavatam like that. Let me be invested in that way. But it's night and day. If it's from a mundane lover, these things are very common. They're considered to be like iron, not a very high quality. But when it's love for Krishna, then it's gold. Let's see the next verse. Then Krishna says, Apuryamanam achala pratishtam samudramapa pravishanti yadvat tadvat kamayam pravishanti sarve sashantam apnoti na kamakami apuryamanam, always being filled, achala pratishtam, steadily situated, samudram, the ocean, apaha, waters, pravishanti, enter, yadvat, as, tadvat, so, kamaha, desires, yam, unto whom, pravishanti, enter, sarve, all, saha, that person, shantim, peace, apnoti, achieves, na, not, kamakami, one who desires to fulfill desires. That's kind of interesting. A kamakami, one who desires to fulfill desires. Interesting. Purport, translation. A person who is not disturbed by the incessant flow of desires that enter like rivers into the ocean, which is ever being filled but is always still, can alone achieve peace, and not the man who strives to satisfy such desires. Altogether. We're really looking for the purport on this one, aren't we? Yes. You can feel it in the room. It's like, give me the purport. Although the vast ocean is always filled with water, it is always, especially during the rainy season, being filled with much more water. But the ocean remains the same, steady. It is not agitated, nor does it cross beyond the limit of its brink. That is also true of a person fixed in Krishna consciousness. As long as one has the material body, the demands of the body for sense gratification will continue. The devotee, however, is not disturbed by such desires because of his fullness. A Krishna-conscious man is not in need of anything because the Lord fulfills all his material necessities. Therefore, he is like the ocean, always full in himself. Desires may come to him like the waters of the rivers that flow into the ocean, but he is steady in his activities, and he is not even slightly disturbed by desires for sense gratification. That is a proof of a Krishna-conscious man, one who has lost all inclinations for material sense gratification, although the desires are present. Because he remains satisfied in the transcendental loving service of the Lord, he can remain steady, like the ocean, and therefore enjoy full peace. Others, however, who want to fulfill desires even up to the limit of liberation, what to speak of material success, never attain peace. The fruit of workers, the salvationists, and also The yogis who are after mystic powers are all unhappy because of unfulfilled desires. But the person in Krishna consciousness is happy in the service of the Lord, and he has no desires to be fulfilled. In fact, he does not even desire liberation from the so-called material bondage. The devotees of Krishna have no material desires, and therefore they're in perfect peace. Reflections? Yes.
So the last point where he mentions that the devotee doesn't even desire mukti, I remember reading in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Nectar of Devotion, that for a devotee who is so fixed in their devotional service, mukti stands at their doorstep, ready to serve them. I don't know the exact reference, but... Yeah.
Yes. This is the standard of pure devotional service, that the devotee isn't even concerned about liberation. And any kind of desire, including that for liberation, is a source of trouble for the living entity.
So I was remembering one purport written by Srila Prabhupada where he was explicitly mentioning that when one's mind is devoid of any kind of sense enjoyment, that time the pure devotional service begins. Then he is in the Brahmabhuta Prasannatma stage, and he takes the pure devotional service at that time. So this is essential what is being told by Krishna here.
Thank you. The verse, please. Yes, is it quoted in the Chaitanya Charitamrita? So he can look it up. Bhaktis Tvai. It's not in the shloka book? Then where is it quoted in Prabhupada's book? Doesn't say? Okay. Okay, yes.
It's just thinking how Prabhupada is very realistic, and he is saying that as long as the body is there, there will be that desire for sense gratification. So, but we don't try to satisfy them. And
the body has to be maintained because it's connected to the material world, and not only that, the mind is embedded in the sense objects in the material world. Krishna tells us in the 11th canto of the Bhagavatam, sense objects are embedded in the mind. There's a relationship because this body is part of the material environment. And when a baby is born, there's an umbilical cord, and it's vibrant until the baby takes its first breath externally, because internally he's actually breathing by the breath of the mother and being fed by the umbilical cord of the mother. And then, did you know when the baby takes its first breath, then the umbilical cord goes dead and they cut the cord. But subtly it's there, and also each one of the senses has that kind of umbilical cord to the objects throughout our life. So it's natural that the body is this biological machine that's connected to the material world. So the sages in the front row are having this shloka conference to figure out where this verse can be displayed. Oh, there it is. So the point is, I just want to finish the point before we look at the verse, and that is that even the body of a pure devotee it still goes on breathing. It still goes on eating and so forth. However, there's a way in which a pure devotee does not have the same kind of body. I mentioned this before, a sadaka deha, but there's also the state in which a person has attained the perfection of life. And the prarabdha, that is, this body is a manifestation of one's previous karma. in order to perfectly accommodate one's previous desires to enjoy the material world in a particular way, as confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita, Shariram Yadavatnoti Yachap Yukramatishvara, and then go on to Ashotram Chakshu Sparshanam Cha, that section of the 15th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita where Krishna describes how we're accommodated by getting a particular kind of body with a set of senses to enjoy the material world according to our previous desires. That's our karma. However, a pure devotee, as Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur explains in the Madhuri Kadambini, has a material body, but it no longer has any connection to the material world. So how does it exist? In other words, if your prarabdha is finished, your body should be finished also. And the answer he gives is that Krishna personally maintains the body of a pure devotee. It's not the prarabdha karma, so that he can go on doing service with the present senses. But that doesn't mean that it doesn't eat. And so, but the intention and the use of it is completely different. That connection has been severed. Okay, now let's look at this verse. Priya Kishori brought it up, so we get to look at it. I'll say, please repeat. Bhaktis tvayis stiratara bhagavan yadi syad. Daivena na palati divya kishora murtihi. Mukti swayam mukulitanjali sevate sman. Dharmartha kama gataya samaya pratikshaha. If I am engaged in devotional service unto you, my dear Lord, then very easily can I perceive your presence everywhere. And as far as liberation is concerned, I think that liberation stands at my door with folded hands, waiting to serve me. And all material conveniences of dharma, religiosity, artha, economic development, and kama, sense gratification, stand with her. From the Krishna Karnamrita. Let's say the translation together. If I am engaged in devotional service unto you, my dear Lord, then very easily can I perceive your presence everywhere. And as far as liberation is concerned, I think that liberation stands at my door with folded hands, waiting to serve me, and all material conveniences of dharma, religiosity, artha, economic development, and kama, sense gratification, stand with her. So, if you give yourself fully to Krishna, then you don't lose in any sphere. That you, in fact, all these conveniences that everyone's looking for become your servants. They stand outside. What can I do for you? The devotee's so preoccupied with Krishna's service that he or she is no longer interested in those particular conveniences at all, because it's such a superior taste. Yes? Question.
Hare Krishna. Prabhuji, question regarding these desires. Long question. Some of the desires are black and white. They are material or spiritual. But the question comes, when the mind tries to, starts tricking, especially for grihastha and in today's world where we feel, okay, this is important so that the life can be better planned, or eventually Krishna consciousness will be more easy at a later stage, especially from a financial perspective. Especially I have seen, devotees, sometimes they take a decision to give up everything, and they might have been better spiritual off if they had a good job rather than trying to give up everything. And anyway, my point is that sometimes the mind tricks it that, actually this is a spiritual desire, do something more, it will eventually help you in the long run in your spiritual life, but very soon you end up having a very consumed lifestyle. So how do you really differentiate between what is a material desire And sometimes what apparently seems to be a material venture but may eventually help you long term in spiritual life.
Well, one thing is that destiny will move whether you make a choice or not. The fact is we're being carried along in a certain direction, and we may calculate, I want to go this direction, but you won't be able to. You'll go in another direction anyway. And the best laid plans that we make in this world may not be fulfilled because things go opposite way. My sister was a professor of geology. She got her full professorship and was ready to retire. And the day that she got her retirement letter, congratulations, you're retired, full pension and everything like that, she also got notice from her doctor that she had 3 months to live. She called me up and I said, how are you? And she said, well, it's kind of interesting. Everything seems to be going well, only I thought I'd live a little longer. I said, what do you mean? She said, well, I got a notice that I have pancreatic cancer. I can only live for 3 more months. And she said, that wasn't my intention. I thought that I was going to live for maybe another 20 years or something like that and take care of my grandchildren. And I mean, it's just one example. Many can be given. You can just read poetry from any culture, or you listen to the songs and find out that destiny moves in its own way. So that's one thing to keep in mind. The other thing is that each person has an individual responsibility to figure these things out, and you have to do so to the best of your ability as you move forward in your devotional career. One thing Prabhupada mentions, a question that comes up oftentimes is, well, how should I maintain myself? And Prabhupada's answer to that is you should be inventive. Invent some way to keep yourself alive. It doesn't have to, do the best you can, in other words, to figure out something so you can keep body and soul together and keep moving forward. And as far as decisions, it's best to be prepared on the material side to take care of whatever obligations you have in front of you, as given by the example, for instance, of Sanatana and Rupa Goswami. When they renounced their jobs, high-paying jobs in the kingdom, it took them a little while to extricate themselves. They took care of obligations that they had to their families and so forth before they left. At least Rupa Goswami is noted to have done that carefully. It took a year to get away, Sanatana even longer. And he had to make incremental decisions as he went forward. And you can see when Sanatana Goswami left, he was put in jail because he didn't want to do his job anymore. And then when he got out of jail, he had a harrowing experience escaping. He was almost killed because his servant was carrying money with him, and somebody almost killed him for the money. And then he got away, and then he saw another relative on the way to meet Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, said, just stay here and we'll get you cleaned up. And he said, no, I can't stay, I got to go. But he gave him a blanket. And when he got to see Mahaprabhu embraced him, and Sanatana got shaved up, everything, but Mahaprabhu kept looking at his blanket. He didn't say anything, he just kept looking at it. And Sanatana thought, oh, he doesn't like the blanket. So he traded it for an old torn quilt, and he came back, and Mahaprabhu said that a physician is careful to make sure the disease is completely eradicated. So I'm being kind of roundabout in what I'm saying, but more specifically, hopefully, is that at every juncture of your life, and we're always changing. That's it's the nature of the environment of this world that it's constantly changing. I try to construct it in my mind in a way that is permanent. That's a problem because it won't stay. It's in flux constantly. And you have to be able to accommodate the various changes in your life and the decisions that you'll have to make because of those changes to increase your service or to stay connected with your service. And if you do that, then, and you make the decision honestly based on like, how can I do the best service? Then you won't make a mistake in how to do that. And it may differ from one person to the next. So we can't compare ourselves also to other people constantly and say, well, this person did it like this, therefore I have to do it like that. You may have a different time scale. And ultimately, you know, you need to be in a situation where you can have strength. Prabhupada mentions this in the section of Gajendra, the elephant, who was dragged into the water and then lost his strength. And Prabhupada says that a person executing devotional service has to be in a strong position. You have to have health, you have to have mental stability, so forth, and that may differ from one person to the next, what you need. So you have to take help from devotees who are on a superior level, who can give you some perspective. Take advice about your personal situation and say, okay, I'm like this, I have this much money, this is how many years I have to live, this is what, you know, what I'm thinking of doing, what do you think? And then they'll say, do this, not that. Or they may say, they may not give you that kind of advice, do this, not that. They may say, here's the consequences of this, here's the consequences of that. And we see Prabhupada's way of adjusting to his changing circumstances in life were based on holding on to the order of his spiritual master. He had invested himself in the Srimad Bhagavatam. In fact, there's some story about his wife selling his Bhagavatam in order to get money. Apparently she wasn't satisfied. He was spending so much time in the Bhagavatam. He's like, why isn't he working harder? You know, we need money and stuff like that. So he was away once. She sold the Bhagavatam. And where's my Bhagavatam? Sold it for, I needed some money to buy some, you know, you got to feed the kids. They needed some biscuits or something like that. And then next thing, Prabhupada wasn't there anymore. He saw that the values were so different and it didn't accommodate his service. I mean, next thing you know, he had the Bhagavatam going on all over the world. I guess she underestimated how much he was into that book and became the, you know, his main focus was how to fulfill the order of my spiritual master. And to that end, he tried different things. He went and associated with some God brothers. He took over the publication of the Nadia Prakash, I believe it was. It was some magazine that his spiritual master had started, and after he left, some devotees were trying to maintain it, but not very well, so they asked him to do it, and then they asked him not to do it. And then he wasn't really sure at that point about taking sannyas either. He says so himself because he said he was having dreams where his spiritual master would come to him and say, take sannyas, come with me. And Prabhupada said, I was horrified. You know, so obviously he was showing for our example the way in which one has to grapple with each incident as one moves forward. It's not like there's a completely clear idea of here's where I'm going to move from here to here, but you have to deal with each incident and soul search and see, am I making the decision for the right reason on this particular thing? And it is okay to do that, but it takes superior guidance. Prabhupada later decided to take sannyas, or he was asking about it from different God brothers. Some told him no, because you have to be part of our mutt before you can do that, show your allegiance here. He went to another one and said, do it immediately, I'll give it to you. And he took sannyas. And then he started projects in India, it didn't work out. He went to America, everyone said it won't work out. But he knew that he had to keep trying to execute the order. Is my answer too long and convoluted? It's kind of meant to be, because it's not a cut and dry thing, but I guess the main sutra is make sure that you're doing it to maintain service, analyze that carefully, and also take help from superior perspective from those who are a little detached from your situation and who are also situated in the process of pure devotional service. And you should be well served to figure it out. And don't worry, life goes by so fast anyway. If there's a way in which you can stay connected to the 5 main processes of devotional service throughout your life, hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, associating with devotees, living in a holy place, worshiping the deities and chanting Hare Krishna. If you can maintain connection to those things, despite your external circumstance, whatever that may be, then you're going to come out on top in the end. You will come to the perfection of life. And even if you make a few mistakes along the way, you can adjust it back towards the center of hearing and chanting. And you may even, if you make a mistake, it's not the end of the world, because that may strengthen your resolve that I won't do that again. So it's hard to lose in devotional service, as you're showing by your example in your life, by steadily moving forward. You've made all kinds of decisions about what to do, and you're just doing it. And nobody can argue with that. When someone just makes up their mind, I'm going to do this, and they do it despite the fact that things go sideways, that's pretty inspiring. Not that anything's gone sideways for you, but I'm just saying for anybody it can go sideways, and probably will at some time. And those can be the times of the greatest growth spiritually. Vidura, for example, was preparing himself internally to completely dedicate himself to devotional service. And then when Duryodhana started ranting and raving at him inside his own house and telling him he didn't deserve to be there, Vidura heard that as Krishna speaking to me through destiny. It's like, I'm getting out of here right now. And it came up in that second. He didn't plan for that. He didn't know Duryodhana was going to go off on him at that point and say, that's when I'm going to run off. He was just preparing himself internally all the time. And when it happened, he knew it. So if you use your life for, make a life of preparation, that means always hearing and chanting, doing your basic sadhana, then you'll be able to perceive from the environment what you're supposed to do at the right time. You'll be able to react properly and take advantage of it. Yes.
So Maharaj, these are from different times in your lectures, so some might be not
different
connected.
times throughout
throughout
the morning?
Throughout the morning today.
Okay.
Yeah. So Prabhash Dubey, Prabhu from Chicago, he says, I like the following that you said, spiritual life requires regular self-examination. It's like, going back to the fundamentals. Akurnath Prabhu says that he couldn't make it to the temple today, but it's nice to be able to watch you from home on Facebook.
Thank you, Akurnath Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
And Rameshwar Prabhu?
Rameshwar, wow.
Oh, one should know with absolute faith that a lifetime of strict practice does spiritualize the bodily senses, and thus they lose any taste for sex and other material so-called illusory pleasures. This process absolutely works.
Wow, that's really a big endorsement.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay.
And there's
anything
one,
else?
Yeah,
yes.
Yeah, and there's one from a devotee who likes mathematical calculations. This is Davesh Prabhu from UK.
Oh.
So, small reflection from his sides, humble obeisances to Prabhuji, and welcome back to ISV. Really appreciate the point Prabhuji made as to how, by giving bit of time every day, one can make steady progress in Krishna consciousness. We are experiencing that since we started to follow a written plan. I also heard on a recent retreat in Wales a quote which is relevant and would like to share that quote. It is from Gaur Gopal Prabhu, and he says that those who are convenience driven, they are experience deprived.
Ah, convenience driven, please.
Are experience deprived.
Experience deprived. Nice. That's helpful. Ramananda Saka has a point and a smile on his face, so this could be interesting. Oh, nice to know, 2 minutes ahead of time. Okay, that's good. Okay, well, I won't be experience deprived, I guess. So, we've heard the words of Krishna from the Bhagavad Gita. In the last 30 seconds, I just want to mention that I'm particularly impressed by the encounter between Narada Muni and Vyasadeva that takes place in the 5th chapter of the Bhagavatam, because they're tying this to Krishna's instructions in the Gita about being connected. Narada Muni tells Vyasadeva, who has done a stellar job at compiling all the Vedas, that the reason that Vyasadeva feels complacent or if he feels unsatisfied is because he hasn't gotten far enough to connect to the personality of Krishna in his writings, in his presentation. And so the answer to life's problems and conundrums and the feelings of dissatisfaction is simply to connect with Krishna very directly. And to that end, there's service to his form, there's the chanting of his names, there's the hearing of his instructions and pastimes. And make no mistake, this is the only panacea. And as Vaisesika Prabhu just said from the UK, is it still the UK? Oh, okay. I'm not sure. From the land of Brexit, that the practical application every day of the principles of bhakti will give one one's own direct experience of satisfaction, happiness, and so forth, and nothing succeeds like success. You have to get some success every day by applying the process so that you can see it for yourself and you'll want more. And you have to keep doing it throughout lifetime. You can't slack off for 1 day or 2 days, because then you can be carried away by your senses and end up 20, 30 years later, or many lifetimes later, taking it up again, which you will. So better finish it now. Be very determined and take this advice very personally by Krishna. It is his personal advice to each one of us, which we can relish and cherish as a very loving thing to do, and that is to articulate exactly what one has to do in order to become happy.